So to start this project off, first thing I needed was a street bike. I had found some tracks on Amazon and I thought it'd be fun to make something to ride this winter. And I told my friend Nick about it and he volunteered up his Kawasaki Z125. This is basically like a Honda Grom, but not made by Honda. You can see the track system here. These I think were made to go on the back of a small quad or maybe even a go-kart. And there's a bunch of different sellers that have them on Amazon. I'll put a link down below. So I bought the tracks and I bought a go-kart axle kit, and I figured there's got to be a way for us to make this work on the rear end of this motorcycle. My first thought was to use the pillow blocks that came with it, but they were just too small, so I upgraded them to something much larger. And the idea here is that we're going to adapt to the back of the swing arm, but the first thing we have to do is actually make the axle kit shorter. Now there are two spline sections that run the brake caliper and one that runs the drivetrain, and I need to move them in about 3 to 4 inches. Now, my first thought was I was going to cut the axle and re-weld it, but after talking to some people, they thought that might not be a good idea, so I figured why not try my hand at machining in some new splines. Now, I've never done this before, but I saw some videos on YouTube about a guy kind of using the actual spline hub as an indexer, so that's what I'm going to try here. I'm using a cutter that I borrowed from a friend at a pretty low and controlled RPM to basically chase the splines down the length of the axle. So the idea here is that I cut one spline in, and then loosen my whole assembly, and then I can basically take the axle out, rotate it one notch over, and then continue on to the next spline. Now, in theory, this should work perfect, and in practice, it did work pretty well. I definitely didn't have a perfectly accurate spline cut, and I wound up accidentally running this cutter in reverse, which you're going to see in a second when I swap it out for something different. Sorry, Matt. The idea behind cutting these splines back in and using the actual splines that I'm starting with worked really well. The only problem that I had was that the depth and the actual profile of the tooth was not exactly what was originally on the axle. You can probably see in the video that it's almost a larger diameter where I'm cutting than where the original splines were. That's okay though, because I bring them over to the lathe and then I can turn down the overall diameter and make these work. Now, I've never really done any spline cutting before, and I wasn't sure what kind of tolerance I would need or really what the geometry should have been, so I figured I would just guess my way through it, and when the drive hub, or in this case, the brake hub fits, I'd know I'd be in good shape. A trick I figured would work well was taking a small grinding wheel and actually chasing out each one of the splines, and that worked perfect to allow the hub to slide onto the spline section. Now, obviously, I didn't need it to be that long. In fact, I needed it to be much shorter so I could turn the rest of the axle down. So I figured I might as well turn it down, and then you can see with a little bit of persuasion from the rubber mallet, the brake section slides on pretty well. With that side done, I can do the rest, but first I need another drive hub to index off of. Now, in this case, I'm using the actual track drive hub, and I had to disassemble the track to get to it, and it's this sort of pocket-looking shaft thing. I hooked it all up on my milling machine in a very janky setup with an angle block and a vise and a couple of clamps, and then I used a V-block on the far side to hold it in place. This one went a lot smoother than the first one because I almost knew what I was doing. This one was 23 teeth, and I believe the brake side was 28 teeth, and in the end I was able to get all these slots cut relatively accurately, and then I go through the same process on the lathe to turn this down and make the actual drive line fit on it. I'm using marking fluid to kind of see where I need to cut and make myself some marks. I turned down the overall diameter, and you can see that threaded end on the very end of the axle, and I'm going to need to transfer that diameter in so that I can rethread the end of the axle itself. I turn the whole section in, and then I'm able to go and cut it off, and then I used just a regular tapping die and a block of wood with my tailstock to thread the end of the axle. It was a weird metric thread, I think an M25, and I accidentally cut the axle a little bit too short, but it's going to wind up being okay. If you're ever in a jam and you don't know how to cut threads, get yourself a hex-shaped die and use a big wrench on your lathe or even in a vise, and you can usually get away with it. I didn't want to try to figure out how to cut these threads, and this worked out perfect. The castle nut threaded on, no problem. So the next thing was how I was going to mount this to the swing arm itself. Now you can see there's a tubular swing arm on the back of this bike with kind of a rectangular port in it. So I measured that out, and then I went over into the metal shop to fabricate up some adapters. I marked out this piece of 1" by 2" plate, and then I can cut it so that it would fit inside the swing arm. Now the inside of the swing arm is about 1 3/4, So I had to do a little bit of ripping on this, and with some kind of creative setups in the bandsaw, you can get a lot done, basically just having to rip a 1/4 inch off of this probably 6-inch long piece of steel. With those pieces cut, I can make sure they fit inside the rectangular swing arm, and with a little persuasion and some grinding, they'll fit perfect. You can see there's a slotted hole there that was originally for the axle, and I'll utilize that so that I can adjust it. Next thing, I need a way to mount the pillow blocks, so I take some 1/2-inch plate and I chop that up on the bandsaw so I can make a really strong mount. Now, I'm adding a lot of leverage to the back of this, so I want to make sure that everything I build is super, super stout and not going to bend or break under the weight and kind of torsion of this thing riding maybe 30, 40 miles an hour in the snow. I grab this plate, put some punch marks in it, and then go over to the drill press so that I can drill holes that I'm eventually going to tap. I decided to go with a threaded hole through this 1/2-inch plate instead of a nut and bolt because I thought it would just kind of make for one less variable that could come loose or rattle off from the vibration. To tap this plate, I'm using my electric tapping arm, which is a really great tool that I got from AliExpress. It's about $1,200, but I use it all the time, and I've had some interest on my Instagram to do a video on it. Here you can see it running in real time. I'm tapping 3/8 through 1/2 inch, and you can hear the clicking of the clutch as it's trying to tap that hole, and I'm able to back out and keep going until I'm able to tap those holes perfectly. I've never broken a tap with this thing. Now you can see the way that 1-inch wide plate is going to fit into the swing arm, and then I can drill and tap this as well. This one I'm going to tap with a 7/16, and this is going to actually be what holds the rear end on the swing arm. Again, using the tapping arm works perfect. Next, I got to do a little bit of prep for welding. There's a bunch of mill scale on this, so I grind it off before I go ahead and weld this on. I put a little bit of a bevel on the end of the 1-inch plate because I want to make sure that it penetrates well, and I crank my welder up and give it a rip. I don't need to worry about that weld sticking out. I don't need to grind it because there's going to be plenty of room for this to float behind the back of the swing arm, and it's not going to be in the way. This allows me to not have to grind any of that weld away, and I can let it kind of stick out. But I got good penetration on this, and I got some good color through the backside, so I know that that weld's nice and strong. You can see the way these bolt onto the swing arm now. This is going to allow me to adjust the axle's distance from the back of the bike so I can tension the chain and straighten it out if it's crooked. Now I've got to bolt on the actual axle assembly, and you can see how it's going to work. Now you might notice there are some shaft collars that weren't originally in there on this axle. I bought those and added them myself. It was a little interesting the way this thing came from Amazon. It had basically no way to lock the drivetrain or the brake on. It was just basically supposed to float in between bearings. So I added some metric shaft collars, and I think it made a big difference in terms of keeping this thing together. So I'm happy that I made the time and investment into that. You can see the way the castle nut thread's on, but I am missing a little hole for a cotter pin, so even though I cut the axle short, I'm able to drill one and put that on there. The castle nut can't be super tight because you need this whole thing to rotate, so you want to just tight enough to keep the actual track on, and then the cotter pin locks it in place. I get the cotter pin in, and then I can keep moving forward. I want to jack up the actual rear end so I can continue to work on it, so I grab a toe jack and throw some blocks underneath it. Now you can see the way the axle kind of fits on the back of the bike. And the next thing to do is put some actual brakes on the rear end of this thing. The front brakes are basically not going to work, so I modified the rear brake mount so that I could get as much out of the brake line as possible, and then I went ahead and grabbed some cardboard so that I could mark it up and then bolt that cardboard to the actual mounting bolts to make sure that everything was going to work in practice. This is a really good way to template designs, and then once you're done, you can scan them into the computer, or in my case, I take a picture and then redraw it in SketchUp. I can cut it out on the plasma table and make the part. If you need to do something like this and don't have a plasma table, there's a bunch of great laser services that do bending online. There's Send Cut Send and HD Laser. But in my case, I have a little press brake, so I'm able to make that piece, do a little adjusting with the grinder, and then bolt it in place. You'll notice I didn't drill the holes for the actual caliper mount. I wanted to do that kind of on hand so that I knew where it was going to mount. And you can see the brake disc has a little bit of a bend to it, but I correct that with a mallet later on. One of the things I noticed was as I wasn't getting enough tension out of the chain, so I added some chain tensioners to the swing arm. Now this is actually a different swing arm than I've been using. I promised my friend Nick, who lent me the bike, that anything I modified or broke, I would replace. So I just went out and got myself a swing arm on eBay so that I could weld to it and I wouldn't feel bad if I broke it. I welded some 1/2-inch nuts onto that, and then I used some hardware just to be able to push the bearing carrier assemblies that I made further back to create more tension on the chain. This bike worked perfect for this. It's got that single shock, nothing gets in the way, and with everything bolted on, you can see how it's going to work. I got a new chain and I made it the correct length, and then I also added a little plastic chain roller tensioner on the bottom of the swing arm, which is going to help keep better chain tension when we're riding it. With everything put on there, you can really start to see it coming together, and so far it looks like it's going to work. The last thing we had to do was actually bleed the brake system so that we could have rear brakes, and while they're not perfect, they're definitely going to help slow this thing down. If you try to squeeze the front brakes in the snow, no matter what kind of tire, or a lot of people use a ski, there just is no braking power. So with these tracks and the amount of traction that they'll have, the rear brakes are going to do all the work. We put this little fairing back on the bottom so that we can keep the rectifier regulator from getting covered in snow. We also had to change out the front tire, and the street tire that Nick came in on was not going to do it, so we swapped it out for kind of a mud tire. Now, if you don't have a tire shop that can change a motorcycle tire, you can definitely do it with tire levers. It's a little more work, but it's not impossible. Just get yourself some motocross tire levers on Amazon or something, and then once you get the tire on, use a little bit of starting fluid and some flame. Make sure you do it in a pile of nice dry leaves so you can burn the neighborhood down, and you can get that bead set, put some air in it, and you'll be good to go. This front tire proves to be really critical when we actually get this thing out and ride it. I can't imagine we would have had any success if we had that slick on the front. Now we got to get it down off the rack, and look closely right here and you'll see the next problem. See how that track just wants to rotate over? Now you can imagine if the axle is spinning and that track were to come off the ground, the whole track assembly would just roll over on itself. So I decided I needed to make some limit straps. And when we actually got this thing out to ride it, these were super critical. So I drew up a limit strap kind of bracket in SketchUp, and then I cut it out on the plasma table. The idea here is that I'm going to use some 2-inch webbing and create just a strap that keeps the whole assembly from rotating. I go over to the ironworker and I punch some holes. In this case, I'm going a little bit over 1/2 inch, and I use the first one as a template for the other 3, and then over on the little Hosfeld press brake, just bend a small offset in it. You might be able to see where I'm going with this now. I drilled some holes in the actual track assembly so I could put a bolt in there, and you can see the way they just rotate over on themselves. If you were to high side this, which a trike wants to do, it would immediately mess up the track's alignment, and you could definitely wind up getting hurt if this thing bucked you. So I think these are super important. Now moving up to a new machine of mine, this is a Weaver 303 walking foot sewing machine. I got this recently, and I'm excited to be able to do more leather working and heavy kind of canvas and, in this case, nylon webbing work. And I took some of this nylon webbing and I wrapped it through the brackets I made about 6 times. So there's 6 layers of the nylon, and it's going to be super, super strong. And then adding a bunch of this heavy number 92 thread and stitching in a sort of X and cross design, which is going to be a really, really strong pattern. And it's going to allow these things to act as a limiting strap without breaking. Being able to make something custom like this is really awesome. I looked on Amazon for a while, and I looked online to try to find a 4-inch limit strap. I couldn't find anything, and what I did find was pretty expensive. So by making them myself, totally custom, and it does the job exactly how I need it. Now you can see the kind of basis of design and it working in action. Now those tracks can't roll over on themselves, but I did leave enough slack for them to go up, so you could still wheelie this thing. I put one on each side, and now each of the tracks are isolated. This is going to work perfect. Just enough travel down so you go up and down hills, but it's not going to roll over, and then if you need to take them off, it's just a couple of bolts. Last but not least, I had to make myself a nice little license plate for the back over on the fiber laser. Mount that thing up, and this thing is ready to test. Now, of course, since I made this, there hasn't been any snow in the tri-state area all winter, but lucky for me, I've got a buddy that lives in upstate New York that you might know named Jimmy DeResta, who's got a field and a bunch of grass that we can destroy. So we pulled this thing out, and my buddy Anthony Panza came up with me, and we sent it for a test run.
right, so this thing worked better than I think I ever could have imagined. It didn't fall apart aside from a couple loose bolts. The limit straps seem to have held up, and if you can tell by some of the clips, I think without them, this thing would have been a total failure. The wheels would have rolled over. Panza was able to wheelie it, and nobody died. So it was definitely super fun, very challenging little project to modify this rear end to work so well on the Grom. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, follow me right here at Make Everything Shop on Instagram. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more videos, more builds, tool videos, and stuff like this. See you next time.